to work for a company owned by one of Bush's fraternity brothers, and she said that she had been the producer of the National Geographic, and that really, you know, to the vulgar or to the uninstructed eye, it might look like controlled demolition, but if you read this book, it will clear it all up for you. Well, I'm afraid not. And then we have, of course, the patsies. Here we have, you could think of Rudolph Valentino or somebody in the chic, right? Atta must have been looking at Rudolph Valentino movies for quite some time to learn that penetrating gaze, or perhaps Bela Lugosi in the Vampire, right? So here is an obvious, you know, bombastic, lurid production of Anglo-American demonic propaganda. And you're supposed to believe that this guy seized controls of the airplane and flew Flight 11 into the North Tower. And we have this collection of patsies. This one in particular, Hani Hanjour, is one of consummate ineptitude, a basket case in the true sense. Jara, probably a little bit better off, especially since there were at least two of him, and so on through the entire list. Now, we have some problems believing this, of course, because the same intelligence establishment that is so emphatic that they know who the hijackers were, just a few months later had to admit that they were all wrong about Iraq. The problem, if you believe any of the Bush stuff, if you believe the official version, you essentially argue, as these left liberals do, Bush was a liar until September 11th. Then he was transmogrified into a teller of truth for several months, but then by the State of the Union of 2002 in January, he started telling lies again because he wanted to go to Iraq. So I think it's a bit of a stretch. Now, the way that I look at all this is summed up in this conceptual diagram, which I commend to your attention. You have patsies, you have moles, you have professional killers. The patsies are the ones that you see, the ones we've just been seeing: Bin Laden, Atta, we're going to see Moussaoui in a minute, Richard Reed, the shoe bomber, useful idiots, fanatics, police agents, double agents, provocateurs, Oswalds. And Oswald said it, I'm just a patsy. These are the people who take the fall. They are scapegoated and destroyed. They are supported before the terrorist action by the moles, the government officials loyal to a private network, people like David Frasca of the FBI, who gets the Minneapolis report and the Phoenix report and proceeds to sit on them and to do nothing. And a guy called Rosenthal, I think his name is, who was his boss, who appeared in Alexandria, Virginia at the Moussaoui trial a couple of days ago. So they're loyal to the private network. And then we have the others, the professional killers, are the people who do have the physical, technical ability to bring about the effects observed. The patsies can have all kinds of criminal intent, and I would not deny that. They are criminally insane in many cases and would love to kill large numbers of people. The problem is that they don't have the physical, technical equipment to do it. But the professional killers do. These are the technicians, CIA, old boys, special forces, the so-called asteroids, the Iran-Contra networks as they evolved into the 90s and into the aughties. And these people also have the ability that, since they're old boys with security clearances and friends, they can take part in using government resources for the crimes. They can help to conduit the actions through the government. So these, again, the patsies, not able to do what they're supposed to do. Even the so-called, I think the average weight of a muscle hijacker was about 150 pounds, and they're going up against these huge football player types who are the military veteran pilots of these airplanes. The entire story is completely fantastic. I wanted to bring some stuff up to date, in particular about Able Danger. Remember that Atta was reported in Newsweek magazine to be a double agent, trained and housed at U.S. military bases. People in Florida say he looked like a double agent. Now, the double agents are run by case officers. They have to report back to case officers and terrorist controllers in the military intelligence bureaucracy on what they're doing. And the problem is, how do you make sure they're doing what they tell you they're doing? How do you check up on a double agent? In other words, if I'm a case officer running a double agent, how do I make sure if you said that you did something, that you actually did it? Well, one way is electronic eavesdropping. And I think that's the key to Able Danger, the story that broke last August. And let's just try to run through this. Let me say also, my slides are probably too detailed. And I realize sometimes the headline is really the punchline or the top line. Don't worry about the rest. The rest is often documentation. If you'd like to get the entire set, once again, please apply to the organizers and they'll give it to you for a modest contribution. So Able Danger comes in 1999. Right? This was a big flap last summer, founded by Shelton and by Shoemaker, who is now the top military officer of the United States. At that time, he was the boss of the Special Forces Command. The Special Forces Command is one of the groups you want to watch out for because those are people who engage in terrorism, quite frankly. And here's his story. He was at Desert One. And you had contractors. It's a large data mining operation, and it's got all kinds of connections inside the Pentagon. And my thesis is simply this, that Able Danger are the terror bosses. They are the terrorist controllers. Their bases, various Air Force facilities. According to Congressman Weldon, a strange maverick Republican who seems to think he's doing something for his own party, he said on August 12th of last year that Able Danger had been tasked to manipulate, degrade, or destroy terrorist groups. Now, as soon as you say manipulate, you're a terrorist controller, because you're telling terrorists what to do. And once manipulate is in your charter, you have a license to do whatever you want. And that's what they did. So these are terrorist controllers, case officers, and babysitters for Atta. And we have this interesting story that the intelligence boss of the Special Forces Command, Jeffrey Lambert, has basically that same bunch of mugshots of the so-called hijackers, and he's got yellow Post-it notes on the faces of people like Atta saying, off limits, you're not allowed to tell the FBI about these people. So it's the typical thing that moles protect the patsies until the crime is done. Not because the patsies can carry out the crime, but because if the patsies are all sitting in jail, you can't scapegoat them as the authors of the crime. You need the patsies to be free. And with that, a whole area of 9/11 research is simply cleared up. Now, there's also a question of dates. When were Atta and company in the U.S.? They were in the U.S. January, February 2000. This overthrows the official version. The Kane-Hamilton Commission goes out the window. And it turns out, according to Knight Ridder, that NSA was monitoring and translating Atta's calls in the United States, presumably around this time, early 2000. So they know everything these people are doing. I also wanted to use this to point your attention to an interesting British book that has come out, 9/11 Revealed, The Unanswered Questions. It's probably the book that has the best pictures, or one of the best picture books on the subject. And these guys deserve a little bit more attention than they've been getting, even if they are a kind of robust LIHOP. There might have been multiple Able Dangers. They might have had others. This guy Schaefer is one of the so-called whistleblowers, former terrorist controller and whistleblowers. There might have been several Able Dangers. In other words, several groups monitoring stables of patsies and terrorists. So they say that they knew that Atta and some other patsies were living in New York City, in Bronx and Brooklyn in early 2000, and then in Wayne, New Jersey. Now this begins to raise problems of the same people being reported in two places at the same time. Now even an experienced patsy can only be in a limited number of places at the same time. I think you'll agree. And of course the Pentagon lawyers say you can't tell the FBI, typical. And the interesting thing is that when these people from Able Danger went to the boss of the Kane-Hamilton Commission, the infamous Philip Zelikow, and said to him, here, we're intelligence DIA colonels and Navy captains, and we're telling you that we did these things, Zelikow said, it's not historically significant. So again, if you want proof that the Kane-Hamilton Commission is just a tissue of lies, here it is. Throw out the Kane-Hamilton Commission. It's not worth the paper that it's printed on. Right? They might make it into the Book of the Month Club in the fiction category, as has been observed. Weldon says that he has a flowchart with all kinds of names, including Atta, and that he gave it to Hadley soon after the attacks but it disappeared, the usual stuff. And the really interesting one is 2.5 terabytes of data. That's even longer than my speech. 2.5 terabytes of data. It's 1/4 of the Library of Congress that was destroyed in May, June of 2000, and other data destroyed in 2001, and most interesting, in spring of 2004. And here's who did it. It was ordered by the Army Intelligence and Security Command General Counsel, Tony Gentry. Now, why hasn't this guy been hauled in front of an investigating committee? Why hasn't he been indicted? This is all illegal. I would submit that these are the records, the 2.5 terabytes, the 1/4 of the Library of Congress, is the records of their spying on the patsies and knowing everything about them. So they've got to deep six all of that data. The other thing is this. Able Warrior is the name of a series of drills. And as you'll see now, we're going to veer more and more as my talk goes on, into the world of these Pentagon code names and so forth. And one of them is Able Warrior. It's usually the biggest yearly drill of the Special Forces Command, and it's defending against terror, war on terror. Remember, the drills come in binary pairs. There's an attacker and a defender. My thesis is Able Danger starts as a troop. The legal justification is these guys are a troop or a stable of actors who pretend to attack in the context of a drill like Able Warrior. Except at a certain point, as so often happens with the drills, somebody decides to flip it live. And the actors become the protagonists of something much bigger. And then within, since we've had lie hop and my hop, there's door hop. And I'm not kidding. This seems to be a secret cell inside Able Danger, which may be the repository of things that are much, much more damning than the simple Able Danger. It was mentioned by Congressman Weldon in his press conference last summer. Rumsfeld immediately said nobody from Able Danger was allowed to testify before Congress, so some of them did show up a little bit later. Now here are the drills. I'm going to try to do a quick overview, something like what Barry did on some of the key points of the official version. But I want you to remember that 9/11 is the day of the drills. Look at them all. 15 plus and counting. Air defense drills, some of them Amalgam Warrior. I don't know which are most important at this point, really. Global Guardian is the big nuclear one. I would point to that. The National Reconnaissance Office, as we'll see, is crashing planes into buildings. The likely vehicle for crashing planes into buildings through that. AWACS and quite a number of others. We'll get back to them. So it means that we have to look more and more, here's Wolfowitz and the rest you know, more and more into these circles, because it is increasingly impossible for many of them not to have been willing participants in what amounts to a coup against the Constitution. Now, the physical impossibility of the official version is always a good horse in an argument. Could the patsies fly the planes? And if they couldn't, who could? Well, you have bin Laden, an eccentric. Nobody accuses him of flying a plane, but he's an eccentric. He's somebody who's notoriously a dreamer, not practical, has to be told what to do, has to get kidney dialysis from the CIA, has to get legal advice from the State Department, has to get visas from the State Department, has to get a personal assistant, Sergeant Muhammad Ali from the U.S. Special Forces of Fort Bragg. They send him a special personal assistant. And his fan club is in Langley, Virginia. You can read the Michael Scheuer book, Imperial Hubris, where the CIA says he's the greatest political operative of the 21st century. He's the Abraham Lincoln of the Arabs. Unbelievable. Our dear friend we know. And now we have Moussaoui. This wretched man is on trial in Alexandria, Virginia. He says that he was going to fly a 747 into the White House with the help of Richard Reed, that we're going to see in a minute. There he is. these wretched individuals, these are pieces of human wreckage. These people ought to be